It's been a while since I made a video about the GoPro Hero 12. I haven't been using it that much lately because of the amazing DJI Osmo Pocket 3 and the Action 4. However, today I'm going to show you how I color grade GP log footage from it. But before that, let me share with you my most used settings on this camera when I do use it. First of all, under the controls menu, I select Pro to get access to the Pro settings, and because I am a Pro YouTuber, then under video settings, I select log, set the aspect ratio to 16:9, the resolution and frame rate to 5.3K 25 or 50p, depending if I want to slow down my footage or not. The lens to linear for the least amount of distortion, and hyper smooth to auto boost for the best stabilization performance. Moving on to the Pro Tune menu, I set the shutter speed to about 1/100, 1/200 to achieve the maximum amount of motion blur in the image without negatively affecting stabilization performance. Then I use these ND filters from Freewell to expose my shots. I'm going to leave a link for them down below, but if you don't have access to ND filters, or unlike me, if you're doing crazy camera movements that can compromise stabilization performance, I would recommend using a higher shutter speed for the best results. Moving on, I adjust the white balance depending on the scene. Usually it's 5000 to 5500 Kelvin because other Kelvin values just look off. Then I set the ISO as low as possible, usually to 100, and the sharpness to low because I prefer to add sharpness myself in post-production. Finally, under preferences, video, I set the bitrate to high and the bit depth to 10 bit for the highest image quality possible. I manually expose all of my shots with these Freewell ND filters, but if I'm doing something like vlogging or action sports, I set the shutter to auto, EV compensation to -0.5, and ISO minimum to 100 and maximum to 400. Now let's jump into my computer and edit some clips in Final Cut Pro. So I have here two clips on the timeline from the Hero 12 shot in GP log in 5.3K 50p. Let's start color grading this clip first, and then I'm going to move on to this one. So first thing I'm going to do is basic color correction, where I adjust the exposure, contrast, saturation, and white balance. Let's add color curves, and I'm going to adjust the contrast and exposure on this shot. I'm going to basically add a few points and create an S-curve in here, and the goal here is not to go below 0 with the shadows or above 100 with the highlights to not lose any information. So I'm quite happy with this. Let's move on to adding saturation with color board. Usually when shooting in flat color profile, I don't add any saturation, but GP log is quite desaturated, as you can see. You definitely need to add some saturation. Let's go about 65%, maybe even more, like 75% on the global saturation. And I'm going to add another color curves, and I'm going to fix the white balance. So this shot definitely leans more towards red. You can see it right here. I'm going to remove that basically by adding a point in here and dragging it down. And actually I think if I change it to like orange, it looks a bit better. And now as you can see, everything here looks white, meaning that the shot is pretty much properly white balanced. Now let's add some sharpness with the sharpen tool. I usually go about 1.2 to 1.5 with the sharpness in Final Cut Pro. And this was the basic color correction. I actually have a LUT that will do it pretty much for you. It will add saturation and contrast, white balance, and sharpness you will have to adjust yourself, but you can download this LUT for free down below. But before you do it, I would appreciate if you can click like on this video and also subscribe to the channel, because it helps me make better videos and more videos on this channel. Let's continue. Next thing I'm going to do is add HSL curves, and I'm going to play around with the dominating colors. In this case, the colors are the blues and also the yellows. So let's add a point in the blues, push it towards teal almost. And also I'm going to add a bit more saturation to the blue, and I'm going to change the color of the temple in here to something a bit warmer to have a nice color contrast going on between this color and this color. And also I'm going to add a bit more saturation and I'm quite happy with this. This is the before and this is the after. Looks much better. Now let's add another color curves, and I'm going to create a mask around the temple to make it a bit brighter than everything else. Something like this, and I'm going to increase the exposure on the inside, but not too much because I don't want to make it look too fake. And then on the outside, I'm going to decrease the exposure just slightly. I'm quite happy with this. This is the before and after. Actually, it looks a bit too fake. Let me reduce the exposure a bit more on the inside of the mask, and now it looks much better. Now I'm also going to add a mask to this part of the image because I feel like it's a bit too dark. So I'm going to zoom out to 25%. I'm going to add another color curves, and I'm going to add a shape mask, make it square, and basically move it to this part of the frame. And slightly increase the exposure on the inside. And I think this looks better. This is the before and after. Now I'm going to add color wheels and push the colors around the shadows, midtones, and highlights. Let's go to something like blue with the shadows. Orange red with the midtones, something like this. And with the highlights, I'm gonna go to like yellow green almost. I kind of like this, and now I'm going to remove this tint on the white part of the frame with color curves. I'm going to use this speaker in here, select the color on here in the shadows, which is orange, and I'm going to slightly reduce it to make the image look a bit more balanced, just like so. This is the before and after, quite big of a difference. Finally, I'm going to add another color curves, and I'm going to, I think, increase the contrast a bit more. And also create like a faded look by increasing the exposure in the shadows here and decreasing the exposure in the highlights to get like a compressed look. I'm quite happy with this. This is the before and after. And actually, I'm also going to desaturate the shadows completely, desaturate the highlights, and I think also increase the exposure in the midtones, create like a nice gradual transition here, just like so. This is the before and after. So let's see what I've done to this shot to make it look the way you just saw. First of all, I adjusted the contrast and exposure with color curves. Then I added saturation with color board. Then I fixed the white balance with color curves again. And then I added some sharpness, and all this was the basic color correction. Next, I played around with the colors with HSL curves, and I basically pushed the blue a bit more towards teal and the yellow on this temple towards orange red. Then I added a mask on this temple to make it a bit more bright with color curves. Then I also added another mask to this part of the frame, to this wall here, to make it a bit brighter because I felt like it was a bit too dark. Then I created a look with color wheels by pushing the shadows towards blue, midtones towards orange, and highlights towards yellow green almost. And then I balanced the look with color curves to make it look a bit more natural. Then I added more contrast with color curves, and finally I balanced out the saturation by decreasing the saturation in the shadows and also the highlights and increasing slightly the saturation in the midtones. Alright, let's move on to the next clip. I'm going to start with basic color correction. Now I'm adjusting the contrast. Alright, I'm quite happy with this. This is the before and after. Now I'm going to add color board and increase the global saturation. Let's go about 60%. This looks good. Now I'm going to add another color curves, and I'm going to fix the white balance. This image definitely leans towards green. We can also take the picker, pick some color in here, and reduce the tint. Also, I'm going to reduce this green in the midtones, and I think I'm done. This is the before, definitely too green, and now it looks a bit more balanced. Next, I'm going to add sharpness 1.2. Now I'm going to start color grading this clip. Let's start by reducing the saturation on this tree because it looks very ugly. I'm going to select these colors in here, just reduce the saturation on the tree to make it look as natural as possible. Now I'm going to play around with the green yellow colors in here. Going to add a point in the yellows, slightly warm them up, and also the greens. Let's move here actually to make it a bit more comfortable. Let's also play around with the oranges here. And also I'm going to desaturate the yellows to create like a vintagey look and increase the saturation in the greens and just play around with the points until I'm happy. I'm also going to decrease the exposure in the greens yellows here, but you have to be very careful with this slider because it can introduce artifacts really easily. Alright, I'm quite happy with this. This is the before and this is the after, a bit more desaturated and flat, neutral looking, but I think with this shot I'm gonna go for a vintagey soft look or something like that. Okay, next I'm going to add another color curves and I'm going to create a mask around this plate, wheel, whatever it's called. If you know the name of this thing, let me know down below. Let's go to the first frame, add a shape mask, and I'm going to increase the exposure on the inside just a bit and decrease the exposure on the outside. Adjust the shape here and basically create a vignette around this plate, whatever it's called. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is push around the colors in the shadows, midtones and highlights. I'm gonna start with the shadows and I'm gonna push them towards, let's go like blue, purple almost. And with the midtones, I'm gonna go for like green, yellow. And the highlights, I'm going to push towards like orange, yellow, warm colors. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go for like green with the highlights, I think, because it's a jungle. It actually looks kind of cool. And I'm going to add color curves and I'm going to select the speaker and select this point in here and basically remove the tint. Actually, I think I need to remove the yellow, the lime. I think lime will be the best. Yes. Just slightly balancing out the image to make it look a bit more normal. Just like so. This is the before and this is after. Looks much better. And now I think I'm going to add HSL curves. And again, I'm going to desaturate the shadows, but not all the way down because I want to keep some saturation on this tree, just not that much. And I'm going to completely desaturate the highlights and slightly, I think, increase the saturation in the midtones, create like a transition in here, something like that. This is the before and after. Alright, let's go through the steps I took with this clip. First, I adjusted the contrast with color curves. Then I added some saturation with color board. Then I fixed the white balance and basically removed the green tint on the image. And then I added sharpness to make the image a bit more sharp. And this was basically basic color correction. Afterwards, I added HSL curves and desaturated the image quite a lot to make the image look a bit more vintagey. Then I masked out this plate thing and created a vignette around it to make it pop a bit more from the background. Then I pushed around the colors to yellow, green colors in the highlights and midtones and like blue, almost magenta, purple colors in the shadows. Then I balanced out the image with color curves to remove the yellow, green tint that I created with color wheels. And finally, I desaturated the shadows, the highlights, and slightly increased the saturation in the midtones with the Luma versus saturation tool in the HSL curves. Anyhow, this is it. I hope you found this video to be informative and useful. Go ahead and download my free GP log LUT for the HERO12 down below. Don't forget to click like on this video and subscribe to the channel. And I guess I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.